A very good morning, students. In this video, we are going to discuss the very first chapter of civics. The chapter name reads itself as power sharing. In this chapter, we are going to resume the tour of democracy that we started last year. In class 9th, we studied that in a democracy, all power does not rest with one particular individual or maybe a group. Instead, the power is shared among the people. So, in this chapter, we start with two stories from Belgium and Sri Lanka, where we are going to discuss how they share power after they get independence. So, let's start with Belgium. Belgium is a very small country in Europe. Belgium is a small country in Europe, and if you compare it to the state of Haryana in India, then it is even smaller in area than the state of Haryana and has a population of half of Haryana. If I say that in Haryana we have a population of around 2 crore people, then the population in Belgium is around 1 crore. Now we discuss the ethnic composition of Belgium, which is very complex. So, see, from the exam point of view, if I say, then both the countries, Belgium and Sri Lanka, become an important question, and every time the ethnic composition of one or the other has been discussed. So, let's discuss one by one both of them in detail. So, we're going to discuss the ethnic composition of Belgium. I'll show you a picture of the map of Belgium. You can see the map of Belgium, wherein we see that the Belgium has been divided into two main regions. If you see region 1 and region 2, right? So these are region 1 and region 2, and we are going to discuss each one of them in detail, right? So this is region 1. The yellow shaded region is the Flemish region. I'll mark it down as the Flemish region. And in this yellow shaded region, which is called the Flemish region, the people speak Dutch language and have 59% of the population of Belgium. So we discussed that the population of Belgium is 1 crore. So around 59% of that will be 59 lakhs, right? So 59 lakh people were living in this yellow shaded region and they spoke Dutch. While if we talk about this red region, then this red region was the Wallonia region. It is also marked here, if you can see the Wallonia region. This red region is called the Wallonia region, and all the people living in this region, they spoke French. So they were 40% of the population, and this yellow shaded region had around 59% of the population. So if we compare both of them, we can easily tell that the Dutch speaking community had the majority with 59% of the population, right? However, even being the majority community, the Dutch speaking people, however being the minority community, they were relatively less rich and powerful. That means all the people living in this region, this red region, who spoke French, they were relatively more powerful and rich, because of which there were tensions between both these community, the Dutch and the French speaking community, during the 1950s and 60s. And if we add this 59%, sorry, it's 59, and if we add this 40%, then we make a total of 99% of the population. What about the rest 1%? This rest 1% lives in this shaded region. If you can see, I'm marking this shaded region like this. It's a rough marking, but you can see that this shaded region constitutes 1% of the population, and these are the German speaking people. And these German speaking people were neither a part of this nor a part of this. They had a separate community, but they were, like had only 1% of the population, so they were quite in minority. Now, what is more interesting about Belgium is this region, this small shaded region in orange color, which is the capital of Belgium. So if I talk about the notes, okay, So when we are talking about the ethnic composition, we already discussed this point. 59% of the population speak Dutch and live in the Flemish region. Which was the Flemish region? The yellow shaded region, right? 40% population live in the Wallonia region, which was the red region, and they speak French. The remaining 1% speak German. This we have already discussed and seen in the next image, which was the map of Belgium. Now we are going to discuss about this region, which is the capital of Belgium, called Brussels, right? So, condition in capital city Brussels. What was the situation in Brussels? It was 80% people speak French and 20% speak Dutch. So if you compare it with the previous image, we knew that the Dutch speaking people were majority in the country. But we see that in the capital city Brussels, Dutch were a minority. So this was a special problem. It says it presented a special problem. The Dutch speaking people constituted a majority in the country but a minority in the capital. The Dutch speaking people had 59% of the population in the country. But if you see in capital city Brussels, then okay. Okay, yeah. So we have come to the right slide. If we talk about the capital city Brussels, then Dutch were a minority here because they constituted only 20% of the population. Now this paragraph is basically telling you about the problems and the tensions which we have already discussed between the two communities. So if you want, you can take a screenshot of it and note it down in your notes register. Okay, so we now move on to discuss about Sri Lanka. The second country is Sri Lanka. All of us know that Sri Lanka is a neighboring country to India, and we also see Sri Lanka whenever we take a map of India, right? So it is an island nation which is just a few kilometers away from the southern coast of Tamil Nadu. It already says it's an island nation and it has a diverse population of about 2 crores. So we compared Belgium to the state of Haryana and we said that it has half the population of Haryana. That means Haryana had a population of around 2 crores and Belgium had half the population of Haryana. And if we compare Sri Lanka to Haryana, then we have the same number of population. If we have 2 crore people in Haryana, then same is the population in Sri Lanka, right? We are now going to discuss about the ethnic composition of Sri Lanka. 74% of the people were the Sinhala speakers. Now what is Sinhala? Sinhala must be a new word to most of you. So Sinhala is basically a language and 74% of the Sri Lankan people spoke Sinhala. This clearly tells us that the Sinhala speakers were having a great majority in Sri Lanka. And all these Sinhala speakers were Buddhist. Okay, so all you need to know about is that 74% of the population spoke Sinhala and most of the Sinhala speakers were Buddhist, right? Now we move on to the second point, which says that 18% of the people spoke Tamil, but we have another subdivision in the Tamil speakers. Out of this 18%, okay, out of this 18%, 13% were Sri Lankan Tamils and the rest 5% were the Indian Tamils. So now what is the difference between the Sri Lankan Tamils and the Indian Tamils? Sri Lankan Tamils were the native people of Sri Lanka who were living in Sri Lanka from always, let's say. And if we talk about the Indian Tamils, these Indian Tamils were the people whose forefathers came from India to Sri Lanka during the colonial period, right? And if we talk about the last point, then around the remaining 7 to 8% of the people were Christians who were both Tamil and Sinhala, right? So this was the ethnic composition of Sri Lanka. And now we know about both the countries. We have already discussed about Belgium and Sri Lanka. We discussed the ethnic composition of Sri Lanka and Belgium also. Imagine now, if we talk about power sharing in these two countries, there could be different outcomes. In the next video, we are going to discuss about what actually happened in both Sri Lanka and Belgium. So that will be all for today. Have a nice day, everyone.